Hello, this is Bill Webb, aka Billy Indiana. Today I'm going to do a board game spotlight for First in Flight. This game was designed by Ben Rossett and Matthew O'Malley. It was published by Artana Games, and Genius Games reached out to me and asked if they could provide a review copy for me to make some content. So today I'm going to do a quick overview of how you play, tell you a little bit about what I think of the game, and hopefully give you enough information that you could decide if this is a game that you might want to try. So first, let me give you a quick overview of the game board layout and the components that are used in the game. So on the game board, you can see a few things. We've got our orange, purple, and white planes down here, little nice wooden chunky pieces. So we put these up closer to the camera so you can see. But they are nice, heavy, not heavy physically, but chunky pieces. And then there's pilots also, these little wooden pieces in the same color matching. And they are going to start the game at this part of the board. You've got this track that goes around the outer edge that tracks how long you fly with the plane that you're developing. And there's a couple at 15 and 40 kind of key spots that we'll talk about. This also has a rondel of actions that you're going to be selecting from. And it uses a turn order time track. So the person who's furthest back will always take the next action. And so it's possible that a certain player could do more than one actions in a row, depending on where people decide to go, because you can always go as far forward as you want, never backward, but the person who is the furthest back always goes. On the left side of the board, we have some friends, and so there's always two friends to start each round. So this one's a little bit behind my camera view there, but we got two friends and then the deck, and you don't replace them during the round. You only replace them after the round, and the rounds are tracked down here in the bottom corner. There's this little wooden clock piece to show us we're in year one, and at the end of the year, we're going to remove these friends if they haven't already been claimed as beneficiaries, and we're going to remove these different tech cards, and we're going to remove over here on the right these skill cards and kind of refresh those each year that passes. And the game's going to end either when we complete 4 years or when someone makes a flight that is at least a distance of 40 or more. And then at that point, everybody's going to do one more flight, and whoever has the longest overall flight wins. And so talking a little bit about these cards, if you have friends that are helping you, they're going to give you a once per year advantage. So here we've got Ada Diacosta, and it says, as your turn, you can pay 2 time in order to activate a friend card or gain a friend card. And then for Leon Bollet, it says, while flying, you can discard a single card from your flight to use or gain a skill card, these green ones. And then these are going to be one kind of ongoing text that you have in your plane. We've got aluminum crane case, +1 for every 4 ones that are in your flight. And then this one is dihedral wing design, +1 for every advanced technology in your flight. And we'll talk about those cards here in a little bit. And then over here on the side, the skills, I won't read through all of them, but they do things generally like as you're playing your cards that simulate the flying action, you can look ahead into the deck and sometimes put some on the bottom, shuffle some back in, ignore some. So they give you just a bunch of different skills that you can use, and those are once per flight. So that's kind of how those cards work just generally. Every player is going to have their own player board, and the player boards are just thin kind of cardboard there. They've got some art on the back. Who will be the first in flight? Brave New Century. And then on the front, you've got a place to put your pilot card. And there are a bunch of different pilots in here. So I'm using Bessie Coleman here. It says, the first time you draw a brown card in your flight, you may pay $2 to use an upgraded card instead of a single drift card. And so we'll talk about what all those things mean. But everyone's going to have a pilot, and then the pawn and the plane represents their flight. We also have this hangar garage over here where we can do repairs to our flight, because we are engineering these planes and the abilities, the skills of our own pilot, and also the different technologies that make the plane fly better. We're going to be developing them as we go. And then we also have a descend card, and I'll talk to you about how that works when we use a flight. And everybody starts with a little bit of money. First player starts with 6, and the next is 7, 8, 9, so on and so forth. There's some nice little reminders over here on the edge of the board, and I won't break all of those down, but it gives you some information about when you fly, when you use this mechanics site here. It gives you some reminders about that. And then what happens when you crash your flight. And then here is the deck of cards that everybody starts with. So everybody's going to start with 4 of these one distance flight cards, kind of a drafting or drifting card. And then everyone's going to start with 1 of these experience cards. And every time this comes up during a flight, it means you're going to add another one of these ones to your flight. And then everybody starts with 4 kind of flaws, design flaws, and they all have different words and symbols to represent what those design flaws are. And they're going to show up in your flight. So you don't know what these design flaws are when you start the game. And you're just going to shuffle up your cards. And then when you fly your plane, you're going to see how far you can go based on how those cards turn. And so this is a push your luck style game, and we'll demonstrate that here in a little bit. So that's kind of a quick layout, quick overview of what you're trying to do in the game. I'll demonstrate some turns so that you can kind of see it in action, and hopefully it'll make it seem a little bit more tangible. But before we do that, a couple other quick things about some design features here. So it's a lot of material that I can't really show you at one spot, but there's a whole bunch of these glide cards that are 1 distance, and then there's some extra of these experience cards that you can gain. There's some basic flight problems that are still bad, but not as bad as design flaws. We've got a whole bunch more design flaws over here. And then these cards are going to be different advantages we can use. They're upgrades to the technology in your flights. And so I'll just show you a couple. Like this one's going to give a distance of 3, and there's a distance of 5. And so those upgrades are available, and then there's some extra money there. So I just have this off to the side, but you can see it's a nice tray that's just kind of easy, and they're all labeled. And then there's another tray in the box for when you're storing it, and there's a place for your skill cards and your tech cards and your friends, and then the little pieces. And then we've got some of the different pilots and descend cards, and then I just have some extra glide cards down here. I sleeve them, and so there's more than I could fit in that tray easily, so I just have some there on the bottom. So those are some extra features just to help you be aware of what comes in the game. All right, so let's just do a couple turns, and I'll talk about some of the actions around the board as we do that. So this person would go first because they're the furthest back. And let's say that right away they just wanted to go to this action where we got this crankcase. They're going to upgrade the technology of their plane. And so there's a symbology here, and there's also a symbology on the player that says you're going to pay a certain amount of money to look at a certain number of cards, or you can pay a certain amount of time. And you can't mix and match. You have to do one or the other. On this track, there's these clocks, and that's what you're going to be looking at if you're paying time. It's also what's going to be what you look at when you crash, if you crash on a flight. So this is going to be, I could pay, for instance, $3, and I could take 3 of these upgrade cards, and I can look at 3 cards, and I got a 5 and a 3 and a 3, and I get to keep 2 and shuffle 1 back into the deck. So then I would put these in my flight deck. I've upgraded my flight, and by paying 3, I could look at 3 cards. If I paid 4, I could look at 4 cards. If I paid 5, I could look at 5 cards. I chose money instead of time, and then I just shuffle those in my deck, and then I shuffle that upgrade that I didn't use back into the upgrade deck, so it's not just sitting on top. All right, so that would be the move that this player chose. And then the next person goes, and let's say they go here. Now this means that for $3, they could choose an upgraded tech card to add to their flight, or they could, for $3, choose a friend to their flight. So I don't have the money and everything set up for different players. But let's say they decided they were going to go ahead and spend the money to get this dihedral wing design. And it's got this little infinity sign in the corner to show that that's going to be an always on action, and +1 for every upgraded card in your flight. So if it was the player who just upgraded their flight, this would be a great one for them because they know they've already got a couple upgraded cards in their deck. But this is going to mean they're valued even more. Oh, and one thing I forgot to do, when you take this upgrade action, it's not shown here, but it is shown on the player board. After you do gain those good cards, you do unfortunately also have to shuffle in, sorry, wrong pile, shuffle in one of these design flaws. And you don't look at what the design flaw is, you just shuffle it into your deck. So I did get 2 upgraded cards, but now instead of 4 design flaws, I have 5 built into my deck. All right, back to the purple turn. So we could say maybe they would choose this dihedral, and they're going to take that and put that wherever their player board is, and you don't replace. All right, so that would be that action. Now let's say this person goes here. They can either take $2, or they could use the wrench action. Wrench is when you have those design flaws revealed, they're going to go into your hangar, so you'd have to fly first to have them revealed. But once they're in your hangar, you can, once per repair, get rid of those design flaws and replace them with just a basic problem. A basic problem card is just going to give you one of these little explosion symbols, which is going to mean you're closer to crashing. But the design flaws not only give you that, they also give you something else, like you have to ignore your best upgrade card, or if you turn over a 1, you have to discard it from the game, so things like that. So the basic problems are still problems, but much better than the design flaws. So that's what that wrench action does. This early in the game, the only reason they would want to go here is to gain that $2 so they could have a little bit extra money. So let's say they go there. Now orange is furthest back. Now orange could go as far as they want, but let's just show you what a flight looks like. So they're going to go here to the flight. And I'll just kind of lay them here across the board. So you shuffle up your deck, and it's push your luck. So you're going to turn over as many cards as you want to see how far you can fly based on the numbers in the top corner. So the first card that I turn over is a 5. Well, that's terrific. So I'm already at a distance of 5, and then 6, and then 7. And you can see how many cards I have in hand. I know 5 of these are bad. And so what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So half of these are bad. And at some point, I'm going to have to decide when I want to descend. Now, if I descend without crashing, I'm going to get a +5. But if I descend and crash, I'm only going to get a 2. And so I'm thinking I can probably push it a little more because I don't have any of those red cards yet. Okay, boom. The largest advanced card in your flight counts as only a 2. So suddenly this 5 becomes a 2. And now I have one of these. If I get 4, I'm going to crash. So I know 4 out of these 9 are bad. Let's go ahead and push again. Okay, this adds 0 distance, and it says if the next card added to your flight is one of those singles, these glide cards, then you discard it from the game. That is not very good at all, and I already have 2 bad cards. Now what happens when you get to the point where you feel like you pushed your luck as far as you can choose to start descending. And so I'm going to do that. So now this is not a 5, it's a 2, 3, 4, 5, and then if I can successfully land, I'd be at 10. And then I'm going to play 2 more cards. As soon as you decide to descend, you're going to play 2 more cards, but you shuffle first. So because some of these skills, if I had had those at this point, I might be able to look ahead and put them in certain order. But as you start descending, you got to focus on landing. You can't execute those skills. So now we flip one over. Oh, another red one. Counts as 2 if it's the first in your flight. Well, fortunately, it wasn't the first in my flight, but now I'm at 3. So if this next card is a red one, I've crashed. If it's not, then I've successfully landed. So we flip it over. All right. Oh, and it's a experience card, which means I'm going to add a +1 glide card to my flight. So there I go. So I successfully flew and landed, but some things happened. This one's only going to count as 2 because of that design flaw. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13. So this was orange player. They're going to go to the 13 spot. Now, if they could have gotten to the 15 spot, they would become famous. And when you become famous, you take your pilot card and you flip it over, and there's going to be an advantage. So for Bessie, she gets an extra one of these experience cards added to her flight deck. So it's a deck building game. That also says the first time you draw one of those brown cards, you can pay only $1 to take on one of those upgrade cards instead of a +1. And so when you play this brown, instead of just adding a +1, you can take one of those upgrades, and the upgrades are all good. So before I had to pay 2 cards to do that, or $2 to do that. Now I have to do 1, plus I get this advantage. But I didn't get, that player didn't get to 15, so they didn't quite make it. But another thing you can do after you fly, whether you crash or not, you can take some of these and put them in your hangar to repair later. Now they definitely want to get rid of this one because this is the one that says their largest upgrade card only serves as a 2, and that killed them here. If they wouldn't have had that come up, this would have been 5, and they would have had enough to become famous even on their first flight. So they definitely want to try to get that one out of their hand. And then this other one's pretty rough too. If it's the first one you draw, if it's the first red card you draw, it counts as 2 instead of just 1, so you'd be halfway to crashing. So I'm going to put that there. Now you can repair this one. And then if you want to repair this one, you have to do an extra $1, but you can only do 1 per repair function. All right, and then, so those are in my hangar. And if one thing that's kind of interesting in the design, pretty clever, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but this one card's a little bit bigger, the descending card. And so I'm going to put that on top to show that if I don't repair those, then they do go back into my flight because they're still design flaws in my plane's engineering. So that was an example of a flight. Let's look at some of these other actions. I won't necessarily play out more turns fully, but so this person would go next. They could go here to the any spot and pay $1 to do any of the actions on the board. They could go here and just take a glide card, or they could, for $3, buy one of these experience cards. And so that's another choice they could make. They could jump all the way to here, and then for $2, buy one of these skills that could be implemented once per flight. They could go all the way to here and get $4, or they could go all the way to here if they really wanted to fly right away. And so let's say they jumped to here and they wanted to buy a skill card. So they'd pay $2, and we'll just look at some of these cards. So this one says, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, draw 2, and shuffle the rest into your deck. So you keep 2 that you know are happening, and then 2 you're going to shuffle back in. So you know a little bit about what's coming, at least in the near future. So they would be putting that by their player board, and that would be a skill that they've taken on. Now, white is the furthest back. They could go here, here. They could even pass this purple one and come all the way here to the $4 one. They could come all the way down here to fly. And so let's say they just came all the way down here to fly, and then they would do the same push your luck standard of playing the cards like I showed a minute ago. And now the orange one's in the back. They could go here and do an any action for $1. And so they might say, well, you know what? If I had enough money, and if it's this same player, they only have $3 left, so they couldn't do this. But for $1, they can take any action. And for $3, they could do the wrench action to get rid of this, which means they need $4. They don't have $4. So let's say they go to here to get the $4. And so they come up to there, they get their $4. And then the purple one goes. Now let's say the purple one jumps to here so that they could get a friend and put that friend into their queue, and so this friend would give them a once per year advantage, and so they would put that by their player board to be able to use once per year. And then it's the orange player again, their furthest one back, and then they go to the wrench and they spend their $3 so that they can get this power failure design flaw out of their engineered part of their plane. So they put this in the flaw discard. So in the tray there is a place where you put the flaw discards, and then they take a basic problem and put that into their flight. Okay, now they have this other one, and they actually have enough money to do that, but you can only do 1 repair per turn. So they would need to come ahead over here to this wrench or to the any action to repair that second one. And if they decide to fly before they repair that second one, that one's going to go in. And the only way you can get them into your hangar for repairs is if they show up in your flight. You can't just rifle through your deck. So if you don't play all your cards, only the ones that showed up in your flight are the ones that could go into the hangar for repairs. So those are all the different actions. Like I said, if you crash, so let's say that the white player, when they flew, they did crash. I've got these laying down so you can see them easier, but normally you play with them standing up, and if you crash, you do lay them down sideways. And then on your next turn, you go forward 1, 2 of these clocks, and that's your turn. You don't really get to do anything, and you're losing time in the race for this Michelin trophy at the end of the year for who flew the furthest. And then the next player would go, and so on and so forth. So you hopefully see the flow of the game. Once you reach the end of this rondelle, you can see there's just clocks here, and you can choose to just jump right in. So if we had, let's say, we take some actions. Sorry, white we can go first. Orange goes, flies again. Purple comes up here, does a repair. White comes up here, takes an any action. And orange could come here to do this card, or buy one of these cards. But let's say they just want to jump right in and take first choice next round. And then the purple one could go here and get a green card, and then go again and take second in the next round. And then this one only has clocks. There's nothing else, so they go here. And so that's kind of the end of that year. So then we, like I said, we flush these cards for friends and tech, and we flush these cards for skill. We replace them with new ones. And then the person who had the longest flight gets $7, second longest gets $5, and anyone who flew beyond that gets $4. And then we move this to year 2. And we start another round, and you keep going. Now, like I said, when someone reaches 15, they get to flip over their pilot card and get some advantages. When someone reaches 40, that's an end game trigger. At that point, everyone will do 1 more flight, and whoever has the longest flight of the game wins. And if there's a tie, it's the first person to reach that flight length that wins. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit about the game. Just some thoughts as I played this game. The very first time I played it, I'm a physics engineering teacher at a high school, and I was thinking, wow, this is kind of an interesting game to think about the engineering that you build this plane, and you don't necessarily always know what the design flaws are until you actually try it. And so you fly it, you realize, oh man, that's a flaw, that's a flaw, that's a flaw. We need to repair those things, but that takes money and that takes time. And so it makes sense in the engineering scope of things. And you might be able to correct it, but it may still be a basic problem because you're tinkering, you're fixing, you're trying to iterate on the design. And so as a physics and engineering teacher, I really liked that aspect of it. It's very thematic. The push your luck, if you think about this as the beginning of flight, and people are really putting a lot at risk, and they're asking for beneficiaries to help them out, and they're trying to upgrade their planes, and they're trying to develop skills as they keep practicing their flights, but it's a dangerous endeavor. And so the theme really comes through well. And if you like push your luck, there's a really fun feeling to that. No matter who's flying, everyone's watching and just want to see, oh, how far are they going to go? How far are they going to go? And you can really push it, and then sometimes you just get a bad luck. So if you don't like luck-based games, this would not be one for you, because sometimes, your first 3 cards might be red card, red card, red card, and you may have a whole bunch of good cards in your deck, but you could crash just by the luck of the draw and how they shuffled up. So if you don't like that kind of a game, this would not be one for you. Some other games that you might compare this to, Heat, Pedal to the Metal is one that's got some deck building in it and some push your luck to it. So there's some good kind of similar feel to that game for this one. If you like Quacks of Quedlinburg, instead of building up a deck of cards, you're building up a bag of tokens, but it's got that deck bag building aspect and then also the push your luck aspect. If you like Clank, it's got that deck building and push your luck aspect. If you like this whole time track where the person in last place goes, or this rondel, Patchwork has both of those with a rondel and last player goes. And then also Tokaido and Trekking Through History have that sort of player in last position keeps going until they're not last anymore. So those are some other games that kind of relate. If you've played any of those games, you might think, oh yeah, I can see how that might feel a little bit similar in that way. Or if you think this is a game that you would like, or you've even played First in Flight and know you like those aspects, those are some other games that you might want to try out as well. So those are some things just to help you understand how the game plays, some of my reflections, the things that I've enjoyed about it. I've played this solo, 2 players, 3 players, and 4 players. And another thing I'll say is, for me personally, I didn't really care for the solo mode. There's a chart that you look at, and there's 2 sort of dummy flyers that do something different depending on where their tokens land. And it was okay. It just felt a little bit fiddly. And I'm really honestly not much of a solo player, so I suppose maybe if I was more of a solo player, I might have enjoyed it more, but I don't think I would ever want to personally play it solo. 2-player is fun, but it is pretty wide open. 3-player, you start to feel a little bit of a pinch, and then there are some friends here who sometimes can help you take the action that's ahead or go to an action that's already occupied by someone, because normally, while 2 people could occupy the same clock space while they're waiting, no 2 people can normally occupy an action space. So that's something to keep in mind, whereas if it's 3 players, that starts to kind of bunch up a little bit, and you can't always get the actions you want unless you get some good friend cards that can help you manipulate that part of the game. And then with 4 players, it was very different. And I think that the importance of the upgrade cards became even more important the higher the player count. So it does play very different from 1 to 2 to 3 and to 4. Every player count that I tried had a little different feel to it. So I think that's, for me, interesting and not a negative, but depending on if you want the same game at every player count, that wouldn't be true here. So those are some different reflections I've had as I've played the game. I want to thank Genius Games for sending me this review copy. Really enjoying it, and hopefully this video helped you understand if it might be a game for you. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments below, and I would be thrilled if you would choose to subscribe to the channel. That always helps out. As always, thanks for watching. This is Billy Indiana, signing off.